Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Lee Whitmore. I'm the Vice President for Education at Focusrite Group. Focusrite Group is Focusrite, Novation, Sequential, Oberheim. We're also Atom Audio, Martin Audio, Linear Research, Sonox, Optimal Audio, and a lot more. And we're here today for another in our series of education thought leadership webinars, specifically focused on California today. And I couldn't be more pleased. We have with us one of our strategic partners in education, a fabulous company, MusicFirst, and their founder and managing director, Jim Frankel. And we also have some prestigious experts from California arts and music education with us today. And so with that, let's get started. Our producer will bring in our guests. And first, Dr. Frankel, Jim Frankel, who I have known for a very long time.
Quite a while.
And since the 90s in New York City, and we started with a couple of companies in Columbia University Teachers College in common. Jim is a recognized expert in music education and audio education and technology. First, Jim, tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do, and then we'll go to our California experts.
Great. Thank you so much, Lee. And I'll only take a moment. I can't wait to hear from Ann and Tony. I'm Jim Frankel, the very proud founder and director of MusicFirst. I've spent the last 30 years, as of today, officially as a teacher in education, although I've been teaching kids for 35 years. And throughout that time, found that technology was a wonderful way to help engage my students and get them really excited about the subject that I love most. I'm really thrilled and encouraged by what the state of California has done with Prop 28. And I'm sure everybody on the webinar tonight can't wait to find out a little bit more from Ann and Tony. So I'll turn it back over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Frankel. And next, I have the pleasure of introducing from San Diego, California, and the current California Music Educators Association president, fabulous educator, leader, Ann Fennell. Ann, tell us and our audience a little bit more about you, your background.
Thank you. I'm also the K-12 music program manager for San Diego Unified School District, and I supervise all of the elementary teachers that go out to the 120 elementary schools and support the middle and high school. I taught myself for 32 years, so the last 10 years in high school, and then 22 years in K-8. So I taught for 32 years prior to this. And now I have the joy of being part of California Music Educators Association and being connected to people just like all of you and Tony.
And it's wonderful to have you here. And next, Tony. And Tony and I had a chance to reminisce, and I'm not going to remember the exact year, but we first met in Anaheim at a NAMM show on the way into a then Quincy Jones Music Consortium meeting with Mary Lurson from the NAMM Foundation. And we've been in touch off and on ever since then. Thank you so much for being here, Tony. Tell our audience a little bit more about you.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be here with this esteemed panel here. And yes, I am a musician, music educator, administrator, but also, like Ann, I have a day gig. I work for the Los Angeles Unified School District as a music coordinator. And as you said, Lee, this has been a long time in this here. I've been in this business now, I think 38 years unofficially, 32 years officially. And just know that I'm honored to be in this esteemed group here and to talk about today's subject.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to have some fun for sure. And as Jim pointed out, and for those of you who registered and received the material letting you know what we're doing today, this is about California arts education. And the experts we've asked to join us and are gratefully participating today are exactly that. There have been lots of things that have changed in California in terms of legislation, budget resources to support music and arts education, and that's what we're here to talk about. I know we have audience members from all over the country and the planet. This is a California-specific conversation about a couple of things. Proposition 28, which we'll talk more about, and also the block grants that exist in California today. And in fact, getting ready for this conversation, I want to thank the folks at MusicFirst, Jim and your team, for coming to us and saying, let's do this together, let's have this conversation. And as I mentioned when we started, this is about providing resources. We all hear lots of questions. It's a fantastic opportunity what's happening in California. And of course, things when they're new, requires some experience, some guidance, and we have sage advice here from Anne and from Tony. And I'll start with this, just a little bit of background. And Jim, I know you're going to take the first question, but folks, you can ask questions at any time. You're watching the stream on the Focusrite YouTube channel, and there is a chat option there. We have team members and all of us as panelists when we have time. We'll check out any questions. Jim and I, as moderators with Anne and Tony, will feed questions in. We have a handful of questions that we want to discuss and bring up, but we're here to help and support you and to provide advice. And I'm sure that some of you will have some thought-provoking questions for everybody here. And yeah, let's jump in. Let's get started. Prop 28, block grant funding, specific to California. A lot of this is new. And what's it mean? And what kind of impact is it going to have on music and arts education in the state? So, Jim, I think you're going to field the first question, or toss out the first pitch, so to speak. So,
sure thing. Thanks very much, Lee. So the first question, we'll start with Anne, and then Tony can definitely follow up. Simple question. Maybe not so simple. What is Prop 28, and how does it affect school, music, and arts education?
Prop 28 is a gift to the universe right now. That's how I feel. It is in perpetuity. It will be forever 1% of the general fund, providing arts education funds for public and charter schools in the state of California. It is law. It cannot be changed. We still have people actually contacting us like, is the money never, it's never going to come, is it? It's never, it's not. No, it's actually a law. It is here forever. And it would require a 2/3 vote to shift that back. So it is arts and music funding that will go to support growth from existing programs. So the monies are not to supplant or take over what exists, but to truly grow the programs and possibilities. And it is K through 12. It provides funding for classified and credentialed educators. And it also allocates 19% of the funds. Let me back up here. We have 80% for classified and credentialed educators, and 19% of the funds are for professional learning and supplies and materials. These funds can be rolled over every 3 years, and there's about 1% held for administrative costs. And it's going to create a pipeline of arts educators from kindergarten all the way through grade 12 into the university system, into the creative economy. That's what's going to happen with this.
Fantastic. Tony.
Well, she said it all. I mean, it just what it is. I mean, but right on the money. I mean, really, literally right on the money. I mean, it is a godsend. It is something that, again, and I know in my time, we've never seen a bill of this magnitude that went across the state of California to the voters, and the voters, pretty much, came out saying, hey, we want to support this. And again, we never hear about anybody saying we want to cut music and arts programs. And now that we have this funding that is supporting music and arts programs, it now comes to really hard work about implementing it and getting it, in the right trajectory. As we know that sometimes things will bump in the night in education, and generally, music and arts sometimes goes bump in the night. So now that at least we have one of the things kind of, at least the funding part of it. Someone says, hey, we can't do it because we don't have any funding. We're like, let's go to Prop 28. How are you using your Prop 28 money? And I think that is phenomenal to be able to have that.
Before I turn it over to Lee, just a quick follow-up to that. And for those of our people in our audience who may not be from California, it seems crazy that you'd need this funding. It's kind of the arts and entertainment capital of the world, maybe other than New York. So any comments on where this came from and why it was needed?
Well, I'll fill that first, and Anne, because Anne will give a more thorough explanation. But no, I'm going to say that, you would think that because we are, quote unquote, one of the capitals of entertainment industry, that we would have a, full-on pipeline of money supporting everything. That's not the case. It's especially not the case in our lower socioeconomic areas. And the other part that's always been a hard thing is about having qualified teachers. And for whatever reason, smoke or mirrors, however you want to frame it, it depends on who's sitting in the leadership positions in the various districts, whether it be the superintendency, whether it be the principals, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what with some of the study loosely have suggested, that when you don't have someone sitting in those chairs, it's not that they don't want to support. It's just sometimes they are overwhelmed and they have to use priorities. And we, in this face of, arts and music, it's a priority to all of us here on this and people listening to this, but not to everybody. When we start looking at how that is going to, the data and the testing, et cetera. I used to think that we needed a test cycle for, music and the arts, but then I'm thinking like, you really can't test the unknown. And we need to be able to, be able to provide these opportunities for kids to learn, because we know that they're learning in different modalities that can't be really regulated through a test.
I'm going to jump in. Thanks, Tony. Perfect wording on all of that. I just think it's so old school where industry does not connect to public schools anymore. I mean, it's just like this runs in isolation. It's that old adage of close your door, do your work, make that money for whatever that might be for you. But it's, in California, the same thing. Yeah, we have a beautiful creative arts economy and what's going on and pockets of it around the nation in different cities. But everyone's always run separate to all of that. And that's always a standard. And so I can say that, part of the work that Austin Buettner, who was the past LA Unified School District Superintendent, who started this motion and created this law, basically, with his folks, he saw what was not happening in LA Unified School District. And sitting in the middle of LA, where all the creatives are working and trying to come in and push in and do wonderful things. And yet, where is that pipeline to the industry? That's like same thing with the teacher needs right now. Where's the pipeline to the teachers? So how do we recognize nothing stands in isolation and that we really are all connected in something special? Yeah. Austin Buettner, I have to say, he was very kind in the original rewrite. He reached out to CMEA and I was able to sit down with them, the lawyers and whatnot, and really try and edit it to the best of our abilities to get it. Now, in hindsight, right, we're like, we should have added this. But, they were really kind to reach out to us as the Music Educators Association. I want to give them a huge shout out for that. So.
Now, I will add, and I think I've shared this with Anne, maybe Anne and Tony. I remember in a role that I was working before I got to Focusrite, working with the Grammy Music Education Coalition, sitting in Austin's office, not his district office, but his personal office with a good friend, Star Parodi, who's a pianist and keyboard player. Some of you may remember her. She was in the original Arsenio Hall Band show years and years ago, passionate about music education. And we had an event at the Village Recorder in the West Village, Jeff Greenberg's iconic recording studio. And Star had said, I want to introduce you to, let's go talk to Austin. And we had this conversation with him. And he asked the question, and I'm sure I was not the first person, or Star and I were not the first, but the question was, what do you think? Could we get enough signatures to put something on the ballot to really make a difference? Now, I don't know, this 6 years ago, maybe 7. I don't know, but I remember having this conversation with him. And then I have been a California voter. I live in New England now. But knowing the work that you all had to go through and that leadership to get this on the ballot and to actually see it having come to fruition and impacting both of your professional lives, your districts, every student in the state of California, what a big vision. And it's not so easy to bring these things across the line. And I know, Anne, you and CMEA had a really big piece in this. Tony, I know you've been working in it and been passionate about it for a long time. It's just such an amazing thing to sort of think, and to our audience, it takes a village, it takes years, right?
Oh, yeah. And Leon, I'm going to jump in because, oh my goodness, it passed the 64.4%. It was across all party lines. It's the highest passage of any education bill ever. And it was truly an easy sell. That was part of their concern, was no one was against it. So you didn't have any negative comment to kind of like push it forward. It was like, we have no one opposing this. So how do we now promote it more? And that's where Austin was very savvy about it, because it was about industry folks who promoted it, current artists in all the arts. And there was a demographic, right? It was that sweet spot of those teenage kids into their 20s and 30s. So it was really smart in that realm.
I've never done any political campaigning as much as I did for that one there, because it was something that was near and dear to my heart. And again, I always tell everybody my saying was, listen, I've never heard anybody talk about arts and music on that grand of a level, and I'm supporting it no matter what. Now, because everybody's always asking, well, what's in it for him and what's in it for them, blah 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 blah. Listen, I'd say ultimately, what's in it for kids? What's in it for the perpetuation of what we know by all the testing and all the study and research says how important the arts are to help with kids' life. And then especially coming in after the after the pandemic, and again, before the pandemic, Austin, first of all, did a tremendous job of leading our district through all of the different things that we were going through. I have to give him credit for that. But I want to say that he was talking about the arts before that, because people would ask me, well, he never mentioned the arts before the. No, actually, he had planned on having a big event downtown and going to bring in people in to talk about this, etc. And then, unfortunately, the pandemic happened. So I have to give him really a lot of props for that too. And then again, all of my colleagues out there who helped to push it and advertise it. And now that, again, the big thing is now what's next. And that's always a great thing, because with creative people like us here, it's always about what's next. It's never about resting on your laurels. It's about now, how do we help to make this and bring it to fruition?
Well, before we dig into resources, experiences, and anecdotes that you both have about the Prop 28, it was suggested to me when we were planning this conversation and web stream, there is another funding source that's been made available in the state of California, and that's the California Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Block Grant. And so, as Jim mentioned, we have some audience members who are listening who may not be from California. And then we have other folks who have joined us from California who have these tools and resources available to them, but they're different. So I'd like to ask our panelists from California, maybe start with Ann and then to Tony, or we can flip-flop, but share a little bit about the differentiation, what the block grant means and how it complements what's happening with Prop 28.
Thanks. Well, Prop 28 is in perpetuity. So this is going to be monies that we will see for the rest of our lives. We'll be out of education. It's never going to end. The block grant really is kind of as a block grant. The challenge of the block grant is we were calling it like arts, music, and the kitchen sink, because anything, it's amazing. In fact, I'm going to send this in the chat, and we'll have maybe Jordan on the backside send this out. I just put a little link in there. Really, it can cover anything from, oh my goodness, professional development materials. It's instructional materials, right? But it also can be diverse, culturally relevant, multilingual school library. It can be operational costs, including retirement and healthcare. So the districts are using it for everything. And there are many districts that opened it up to the music teachers and arts teachers. And I know a music teacher that spent $150,000 on his band. It was great. And then it was a little bit of fear it was going to be cut. It's now at $3.08 billion, I think. But the reality is that some districts did get a touch on that and did get it specific for arts and music, which is wonderful. It's just that the instructional materials part of that is so large that other school districts did not open that up for arts and music. So here's my thought. Yeah, if you didn't get it through the arts and music block grant, you're gonna have to put it a little bit on a waiting list here on what your financial needs are, and start to think about it, finding these needs and supporting these needs through Prop 28 funds that, again, you can roll over every 3 years. So you can up to 3 years. So you can start to save a little bit of money, if you will, because we're fighting hard to even get some arts and music from those block grant monies. Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that block grant, it's ending in 2026.
Yeah. It's a short timeline.
Right. And, and I go back to the days of, Proposition 13 in LA Unified and, and around. So we know that sometimes when people say, oh, you got this pot of money, we're going to take away from this other pot of money. And that was kind of I know talking to Ann and others are concerned about Prop 28 and about how that would equalize things out. And again, at that time, the block grant money really wasn't enough to sustain programs as much as say as now dealing with Prop 28. So I think that kind of comes with the territory about balancing your budgets and everything else. But I will say that the biggest barrier, as I can see, I'm going forward a little bit with that, is the leadership in the chairs and about how they're going to allocate those monies over time. And then again, the other big part for us, I know what we're going to get to, and Ann and I know this, very well, is having enough people in those positions. So even if you had gotten the block grant and you don't have a teacher, it's hard to do anything to make that happen. So now with the Prop 28 funding coming in, it should help you to establish a teacher and to be able to bring in maybe some ancillary things as well.
Right. Oh, I love what you said there, Tony. It is that one-time thing that you're going to purchase those one-time items for, that you're not going to find that coming every single year. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
So if I can just jump in, and sorry about that. It's always fun to get a phone call during a webinar. As music educators, we do a lot of worrying about funding, about whether our programs are going to get cut. All the unfortunately, it's kind of the battle scars of many music teachers is that how do I get funding? How do I secure my job? That kind of thing. The Prop 28 thing to me, as well as this block grant that you just mentioned, must be a godsend for many, many, many music teachers who are feeling a little bit more at ease. But they probably, like many music teachers, have no clue about how to go about getting that funding, about whether it's available to them. I'm sure that some of the more jaded ones might think that money's never going to get to them. It's going to be used for other things. So I'll start with Tony this time. The question for you is, what do educators and administrators need to know about effectively securing and using these new funding resources?
Well, I would say right now to the educators especially is that it is very to their advantage to really find out what's happening at their school level and their local level and their district levels. They need to be in conversation. They need not to be always, I got to rehearse, I can't talk to my principal. That needs to, that needs to stop. I mean, quite frankly, and the thing about it is, I don't think of any other fields that we are in education, except the arts and music in this case here, that we are the ones who have to provide the instruction and have to provide the budget and everything else. So there's an enormous strain on music educators going into the business, and that's probably the biggest part about burnout and and keeping consistency. So having those conversations, understanding that. I think I would implore, I know with different colleges and universities, to have these conversations with their students, I said kids, with their students, so that when they come out, they are able to have some of these conversations and ask them, what's available, and especially here in California, but I would say across the nation, because that's the turmoil. Sometimes we're just happy to get a job, and then we get a job, but we have no resources. Then that leads to burnout, and then that leads to the being jaded. And all the other things that we know that could go wrong or go bump in the night. But I know all of us here who have been fighting and doing this work for a long time, we know that this is kind of that part of the armor we have to put on to go ready to go into work every day or every year for that matter. But I think this, again, where we are now as a state, I think it's a great energetic, synergetic time to really try to work it. And that's why, for me, I like reaching down to Ann in San Diego or CMEA, whatever hat she's wearing, because we all wear multiple hats, to be able to say, hey, how can this work? What is the vision? How do we incorporate? And then the other thing I'd like to say before I pass it to Ann is about our obviously, something needs to be in place to help educate our administrators. And again, I hate to say it, that really falls on the honest of the teacher as well, because sometimes the administrator might not know. And that might just be coming to your rehearsal or coming to a performance and then showing the parents and, the gravitas that your program may have in so many areas, so that a person who may not have had an arts experience will be able to say, wow, I didn't ever thought about it this way, because any term of the day or when thing is happening, I guarantee you that we as music and arts, we fit into those cups. And I think that's where it is. Teachers, you got to have kids involved too, and you got to meet them where they are. So, and that's my spiel.
You know, as you were talking, Tony, I was thinking about those parents out there. I was also thinking like another benefit of Prop 20 is that parents can no longer say, well, there's not enough jobs, you're just going to lose your job. Right now, it's going to be that thing. That's an old school statement anymore. Like, let's not cut teachers. We need them, you know, workforce development. We need these teachers. And you can say, oh my gosh, not only will you not be released because of cuts, look at the hundreds of jobs, you know, the 7,000 jobs we need in the state right now. I actually have used that with a couple students at San Diego State whose parents were pushing against them. And I went, I don't know, the Bay Area was given $10,000 bonus sign-in bonuses for education. When have we ever heard that before?
Right.
$10,000 bonus. Well, that'd be like a month's rent in Bay Area, but but you know, that's real, right? So now we can support it even to parents and say that you are going to be an educator and you are going to be valued, and the law sees your value and the school district see your value. And now they're that part of that integral educational team. It's no longer an extra. It's no longer special. It's really about a well-rounded education provided by the state and the taxpayers. Yeah. I want to go to the statement about what do we need to know, right? Because that's important. So for principals and for teachers, you need to know what currently exists. And you need to know what your students want. I think we're long past the time of I'm going to make this program in place and the kids are going to come. I think with leaning towards personalized education and, you know, asset building of asset-based pedagogies and what we're doing with students, what do they want at the schools that doesn't exist right now? Do they want to do music composition on technology? Do they want to create another mariachi or a mariachi ensemble? Do they want to create a steel pan ensemble? Maybe there's a rock band class. There's so much possibility right now in what students know they want. And let me tell you, it's kind of important because public school enrollment is shifting and we better be meeting the needs of students. So what do your students want? What programs do you currently offer so you don't duplicate it, because the role is to supplement and not supplant. That means, you know, they can't release one teacher who's expensive and the next year put in someone new in the same position, right? So they're going to supplement the program, make it bigger and larger and better for what students need. So I would say you got to have a plan in place with your entire arts department. If you're one person, lucky you. If there's like 12 of you, sit down and talk about what do these monies look like? How much of this funds are we going to get? And can we make some departmental choices? So I would even think like a strategic plan of sorts. And work well with your peers. Make some friends across the arts alleys in your school. I'm going to put a link and we'll have Jordan put that in. But if you want to find out exactly how much money your school district and how much your schools are making or going to be receiving, which I'm going to tell you in a second what that looks like, there's the link in there. Have the monies been released? The big answer is no. They said anytime in the fall. My concern is that fall ends in mid-December, but now they're hearing possibly in November. They do have someone on the career side at the Department of Education right now beginning to work with this. We have a couple people now that have been hired on the financial side. So we hope to see these funds start to come forward. They have not come out yet. But let me just also say then quickly, and that is that if it's a larger school district, we're seeing larger school districts supplement with a little bit, getting some hirings in place, knowing the money is going to come in. Smaller districts who don't have the money are just waiting for the money to roll in.
So before I turn it over to Lee for the next question, there have been quite a few questions that have been rolling in through the stream. And I think I can sum up all of them in a question, you know, to both of you. First of all, any teacher, any music educator that would be working with the two of you would be very lucky to have super informed administrators who are on top of this. But the reality is that there are probably administrators who are, you know, treading water, just keeping their heads above water, trying to get the school year started, and may not be informed as the two of you. So what would be some pointers in kind of a careful way for a music teacher to get their administrator to get on this and help them? What would you suggest to music teachers who need to nudge their administrators a little bit, if you will, to get these resources for them?
Well, for sure, I know that teachers, administrators, they want to see things in writing. And so the links that Ann has provided in the chat here, I would, make sure you get access to those and you print them out. Don't ask them to go to the website and look at it because they don't have time for that. Print them out, highlight, it's like turning in a report, and so they could see how it pertains so that when they have questions or their inquiries with other people, they could refer to that because that's what it is. It's like, again, going back to educating, your administrator and showing your administrator. The key word now is data. Everybody wants data. Well, this is the data right here that's so far out there. And then also too, again, like Ann said about, having those meetings and really, if you can build a consensus with your schools and your departments, that's even better. But if say drama's hitting up over here and then, music's over there, and then, you got, whatever, dance, not whatever. I mean that respectfully, but I'm just saying everybody is not together on the same page. It makes it very hard for the administrator to be able to support. And the first thing they'll say, and we see that with many things, I'll let you guys figure it out and then I'll come back. And then there, it creates the infighting and then nothing gets done. So this is the perfect time to say, hey, let's come together. Let's talk about this. What are the needs? And then, I was always taught from my mentors early on, create a wish list. Maybe everything is not going to happen at once. It's okay. And maybe, the department that has been neglected gets, a little bit more up front. And then, because, it just, you start equalizing it out rather than, oh, the music department, oh, that band gets everything all the time, blah, blah, look at those things there. And again, going back to it, what are the kids wanting? And obviously, and this is not a commercial for you guys, but it's like, the kids are wanting things that are not out of the big three. And Jim, I've talked about this before, whether it be outside of orchestra or band or choir, and then Ann mentioned earlier, still drums, all those different things, producing, all those things there are very important for us to look at because we are looking at how we're serving our students. And it could be one of those magnets that helps to draw back into public education.
Beautiful, Tony.
I'll tap into a couple more questions that are related, Jim, and everyone in the audience. Thank you. Continue to ask questions. We'll address as many as we can. One of the questions Joseph asks, a couple of things. What's the timing for resources? I think, and I've heard this from teachers and administrators, am I missing out? So there's the question of where do I find the information? And I heard loud and clear your answers to Jim's question, which is, be proactive, don't wait. You as a music educator, arts educator, and we'll talk a little bit more about where there are resources from CMEA and other sources later. But Joseph had a couple questions. When's the money supposed to show up for Prop 28? And then also a second question, and this is a lot of meaty stuff, but Joseph said, my school has many VAPA teachers, but we're struggling with training and supplies. We can't add teachers as there are no available classrooms. What will the 80-19-1 waiver require? So there's two big questions in there, but go ahead.
Some of the comprehensive high schools, that is real. They have so much money and they have no room in their schedule and they have no room. So I am curious to see what the waiver is going to say, because I know that you can increase. There might be also ways, I know some people are quite territorial about their spaces. It might be that you have a teacher come and teach during your prep period in your room, and maybe that teacher is also at another site. And so there maybe are expanding programs across sites. We're seeing that as well. I think that's really important to think about. So think about proactively, again, what do kids want? How do we share space and place? It's not in our room. And then how do we support them across multiple schools? It's in the scheduling really can happen. Yeah. I do want to tag on something that we were talking about just earlier. Tony had talked about, working with administrators. I had an administrator. I had no one in my original school district when I taught for years. And my principal knew nothing about the arts. And I made it my choice to sit with him every Friday afternoon. Hey, here are the standards. Because we had all the arts at our school. It was a K-8 magnet school. And it was magnet school in the arts and dynamic principal. And he goes, okay, what do you have? And I'm like, here are the standards. This is what it is. Make a relationship with your administrator. And use different language. It's not about it's not about my program. It's about students and looking out for everybody and all programs. So be cautious with the language that you use as well.
Right.
Yeah, thank you both. And then just general guidance. One of the part of Richard Joseph's question actually was just timing. What are you seeing in your district, and Anne, Tony, and what kind of advice and guidance on the vision and time frame of deployment of resources?
Okay, I'm going to jump in on this one fast, because if you want to hire classified folks, you need to make sure the job descriptions are updated with the appropriate amount of pay, because I don't think it's fair to hire a teaching artist at $35, $36 an hour. So what is that pay going to be for those teaching artists? So dig around and start writing job descriptions, because I know in San Unified, these were started in the spring and they have yet to be approved by the board. It takes months to get jobs approved because it goes through union talk and language, and then it gets moved forward, and then it gets moved forward into the board approval once everything has had their check, everyone's had check marks on it. So what are those jobs? If you want to hire a coach, where is that in your hiring? So think about that. Think about planning for that. And then think about also the monies that will be in place. Again, they're saying, as you had asked earlier, Lee, they're not in place yet. We do know larger school districts put about 50% of what their allocated funds are going to be into budgets to start some hiring. And then when the money comes in, they're just going to push it back out to the other account. So honestly, it's going to help the larger school districts. It's helping the smaller school districts and not. They are truly on hold until money show up between now and December.
And I concur with that. I think, again, job descriptions, also to looking at working with your arts partners about what your communities could look like. That way you're not feel like you're doing it all by yourself. The partners who may be listening to this right now, looking at the district standards, the state standards, the national standards, and how you're aligning with these things here, because I know that the rub is going to be a little bit, between, our highly credentialed teacher, quote unquote, that of a teaching artist. And that's something that has to be defined still. And I know, though, that we, those of us who've been in the classroom, understand that it's not just the art form, it's all the other things that we have to do too. So it's working with us and really trying to understand, as we seek to understand you, seek to understand us, so we could work together to build a pipeline. Because we can't have people come and teach for 2 days and leave, go on tour for 2 months and come back and say, hey, I'm back. Well, that doesn't work for us, because we're looking at comprehensive sequential education. So understanding about what that's going to look like and how, say, well, hey, it's going to get a job. Well, it's not that easy. But it can be, about how you design it, residencies, getting young people to want to come into teaching, to teach full time, so they could be the facilitators. It's going to be a lot of thought processes about that, because we worked hard to have what we have, but now we're going into a new world. And I think if we look at it like through the lens of ecology universities, when you bring in people to do workshops or master classes, whatever, that could be a great way, a great lens to try to get things going in the right direction. But the main thing is not to lose creativity and be innovative about what it looks like. It's not going to look the same in every neighborhood across California like it does anywhere else.
Perfect, Tony. Yeah, because every little area has their own culture, subculture of what's thriving in your area, and you have to meet those needs. Mm-hmm. To that point of credentialing, we have so many incredible people out there that have never thought of themselves as even getting a credential. I just put in the chat the multiple ways you can actually get a credential in the state of California. Unless you want to stay with it as a performing artist, wonderful. There are going to be classified positions. Most likely that you're not going to be teaching a class by yourself, but you could be supporting in multiple ways as coaching or whatnot, running sectionals, etc. But these credentialing pathways are important. By the way, I want to add that we just in the last year or so just got dance and just got theater credentials. So this is the timing is perfect, because now we have so many folks that want to come in and have that type of content to teach it. They have that experience and their expertise, and they want to see these as viable classes in the arts. So you don't have to be a TEP teacher to just teach dance, and you don't have to be an English teacher to teach theater. So now you can start to becoming specialized in that area.
And to that point, Anne, I noticed in the chat, Mary asked, can districts hire non-certified music professionals as
So,
teachers?
not as a classroom teacher per se. They might have a professional 150 hours in their area of expertise, then they could become a CTE credentialed teacher. So it wouldn't be on the traditional path of being a credentialed arts educator teaching me, for example, K-12 music. It might be in the career tech ed. CTE is career tech ed. And that side might be where they're going to get their credential. And yes, to high schools that are doing that. Arts, media, entertainment are really expanding and supporting many needs of many students.
And I will take a moment. You mentioned career and technical education, CTE. Folks, if you're interested, if you do a web search, Google or whatever your preferred search engine is for Focusrite and CTE, you will see Anne has participated in this panel. We hold an annual event around this and have a funding guide that we keep up to date in terms of trends for Perkins funds and how they're dispersed and how the states deploy them. And I know, Tony, you know a good deal about career and technical education as well.
Well, I'm learning about it a lot, and an interesting fact in our district, historically, before arts had its own track, it was under CTE. Because kids would come in, they would they could perform, they would play a gig at night, boom, they're making money. So it was right on that when again with our other shop classes and everything. And I think it's an incredible way to look at how we are expanding what we're being able to offer our kids to go on to the next level. So, but yes, I've been talking to our CTE as well in LA Unified to talk about that because it's sometimes it's better to have something than nothing at a school site. And we look across to some of the other districts around. There are some districts still that don't have anything. No one really wants to admit it, but it's the truth, and it's okay. I mean, it's okay. That's why we have Prop 28 now, so that we can help to rectify that situation.
Bringing it back to audience, we had some pre-established questions that we talked about, and I'll pull us back to one of the anchor questions, which is, and I'm going to toss an audible on this or throw out one just a little. The original question was, given these programs and new resources are available, and we're talking about some challenges, but I would say to Anne and to Tony before we get to like where should our audience go, resources and more, do you have some anecdotes? It doesn't necessarily have to be a challenge in your district or with districts that you and colleagues you've worked with. Success stories, what's worked well. You mentioned that some of the larger districts are reserving dollars that they know because the money will come. It may not be there today, but I think we'll ask both of you, maybe Tony first and Anne, or it could be either way, some successes, positive things, and some challenges for our audience to consider.
Madam President?
Oh my goodness, Tony. I'm sure I'll go first. That cracks me up.
Right.
In San Diego Unified, we were able to hire elementary arts teachers to provide media and digital arts, as well as a group of performing arts. So an individual will go into elementary schools and teach theater, dance, and music as a performing art. And then half the year they switch to another person comes in and does media arts, digital media. So we were able to hire 22 folks for elementary, which is a lot. And that's only with half the funds. So next year we want to hire another 22. And I personally sat in about 15 budget meetings for the secondary, middle and high school programs with the principals as they were doing their budgets. So it was last February and March, and we sat down and we had a gap analysis of what is missing in the vertical alignment from elementary to middle to high, and said, hey, this is missing. We suggest this. And so they were able to start putting into place, okay, we're going to hire this. We need a partial theater tech person. We could share that with the middle school. They could teach both. We saw an increase in dance and we saw an increase in theater teachers immediately. So that's a win-win. And I'm going to hold on the wins because I'm very thankful that we even have those right now. Tony?
Yeah, I'm going to echo the same thing, although I don't have the hard data. I know that it's just it's an exciting buzz time right now that Prop 28 is here. And I know that there are more schools now, both inside LAUSD and outside and around the county that I've been checking out, that they are just, a little bit more like a burden laid off their back. They are like, hey, we gotta put together a plan, but we can do this, and we got to start working with our different partners, our colleges, universities, and now even getting our teachers to talk to our kids who are going to be the ones in the pipeline, getting them to be a little more enthusiastic or excited about this. Because Ann said earlier, it's like sometimes people would say don't go into it. I know I was told even when I was a wee lad, not to go into this business. Music is the first thing to cut. But well, that anecdotal story now has been turned upside down. So there is, we always say there's hope, and there's a lot of hope in what we're doing. And we, again, being able to talk to the future and being able to have these conversations on a more realistic level becomes more powerful for all of us.
My gosh, Tony, that made me think what we did at the All-State conference. We had intentional conversations with every single All-State group, and we want you as an educator, music educator. Right. We are very clear about that, and we went to all the rehearsals, orchestra, choir, and band, and we said this is for everybody. When I was growing up, the director would only go to like a couple people and say, well, you should think about music education because they might have been first chair or something. Right. Now, we got to stop that, because an educator comes from anywhere, in the most beautiful and the most important thing is their passion, right? So if they are passionate, oh my gosh, we need to start encouraging people. And I'm not saying in high school, grade 11, 12, I'm saying hit them in middle school hard, because they start to make and form those decisions fast. And parents need to start hearing about it as a normal part of our talk.
Right. And that's what I would say, I'll dovetail on that too, that again, when you're dealing with some of their lower socioeconomic stratas that we deal with in unified school districts, that conversation needs to be held more. This is a viable career. Here's your options. You could do this. Don't put it past you. In the families, because sometimes our families are, again, they're looking at it from one lens. Go out and get a good paying job. You got to become a doctor or a lawyer. Well, and we know we got to look at the equity about salaries and everything. That's a different thing. But having a steady career job that you enjoy and that that you're passionate about, well, then all of us here, we've gotten here in different ways, and that's the way about laying out the path, and that's what we want to do for kids.
That's great.
I'll do a plug for LA or Sandy Unified. If you want a job in arts education, please contact me.
I'm going to call you in. I'm just kidding.
Before I ask you our last prepared question, which is about resources, I think for those folks that when they think about California, they think about Los Angeles, they think about San Diego, they think about San Francisco. But Ann and Tony, when I was in the All-State conference in Fresno, I drove from Fresno to Monterey, California, and to meet a friend. And I think a lot of East Coasters like myself don't realize just how vast California is and how the vast majority of it is actually rural. It's only these little pockets where, you have a massive population. What about teachers, say, in that amazing breadbasket where, almonds are growing, in the more rural areas of California? Is Prop 28 only for the big cities, or what would you recommend for those folks in rural areas?
It's for everybody. That's the beauty about, again, this bill that was designed. It's for everybody. We're up to the top of, I have a friend now who works up in Crescent City. He's building resources, and California is a vast state. So yes, everywhere this funding is available. And so anybody who's listening here from California, you should understand that. Don't think, well, you got to go to LA or because we need you to be in other areas, LA or San Diego. We need you to be in other areas. We want to bring, keep these art forms invested for our kids.
Yeah, well said, Tony. I am worried about the rural areas because, this is where in hindsight I look back at the law and go, oh, we should have written it differently. Because if you have a low population school, you're not going to have enough money. And I've seen some of the schools, they have like maybe $8,000, maybe $8,000, maybe, wow. Maybe 5, maybe 3, maybe 2. I'm not kidding. Some of these smaller schools, it's based on population. Yes, Title I gets a little bit more money per child. Title I students, free and reduced lunch students get a little bit more money. But I am worried about those small schools that will take more than 3 years to ever get enough money to do anything with it. So what do we do to support, to, yes, look at the workforce development towards encourage and grow your own and support these students to stay in that area and really support the arts in the rural areas, because it's important, right? We know the health of the community is defined by the power of the arts that exist. And we need to continue to lift that up. So what does that look like? And what are they going to choose to do with a waiver, right? Because just as you might have too many things going on at your school, you also don't have enough. So how can they waive the money to make sure that more money is moved towards the employment and not just supplies? That's one of my biggest concerns. I just feel it's certainly not an equitable amount for these schools across the board. So they just have to stay on top of what the monies are and just be ready to have a really lovely conversation with everyone in their school. Sometimes the superintendent is the principal, and the principal actually teaches a class in some of these schools.
Yep.
That's real. And how do we make sure that everyone is getting the information so they can think long-term? Again, share educators across towns, all those things.
So that's a perfect segue, Anne, about the information. You obviously, again, the two of you eat, breathed, I don't think that's the right way, and slept Prop 28 for a couple years now. What resources, Tony, we'll start with you. What resources would you recommend for audience members to seek more information? I will say for folks, please look in the comment thread, because Anne has shared a whole bunch of those resources. But Tony, hey, I'm a music teacher. I'm a music teacher in New York. I just graduated with a music ed degree. I can't get a gig. Should I come to California? How do I find out more information? And for those teachers who are already in your great state, how do they find out more about Prop 28?
Well, I would say, first of all, about anybody looking at moving states, please look at the reciprocation about your credentialing. Make sure that, it's a fit. Just don't come here thinking you're going to get a job, because our state does have its own regulations as everybody else. So be very careful about that. And for those young teachers also, you do a little bit of a survey about the economics of living in California. I cannot caution you more than that, because we want you to be able to come here and be able to really work and develop students, but you can't do that if you're worried about paying your rent. That's the reality of it. And the other part of it is, for those of you here in California, again, I cannot emphasize enough about joining, whether it be NAFME, CMEA, or being a part of professional organizations where you can, woodshed this information. That's what it is. Like we woodshed our instruments or our art form. You have to do this, and you have to bounce ideas off. And a lot of times where we miss out as educators, sometimes we become very siloed. I've seen teachers at their own school become siloed. They don't know what the art department is doing, whatever, and there's no way of coming to, they're not coming together. It's not no way, but they're not coming together. So it's always going to be about building community, because that's ultimately what we impact. We impact community. It's music and the arts. Everybody, want to go see a movie, and you want to hear that great soundtrack. You want to see the great cinematography. You want to see the dance, whatever it is. All those things are important, and that they will never go out of fashion. Even as we talk about, all the AI and everything else, I don't think they're ever going to go out of fashion. And
I thank you, Tony. And I think our students deserve to know what's there for them, right? So part of it, we need to be advocating. Yes, get on the California Department of Education's website. All you have to do is put in Google. My goodness, put it in, put your question in. We threw some Q&A links in there, and you're going to see questions. I personally answer the CMEA Q&A. In fact, someone just was on it today and said, hey, I would like to get my teaching credential. Would Prop 28 pay for that? No, but it was a question that I could address immediately. Right. But I think that we as teachers need to take 5 minutes a day and start doing some Googling, reach out to the organizations for theater, for art, for dance, for music, because we're all in this together. And when one rises, we all rise, and our kids deserve the best. So it's on us to do this.
Definitely.
And Tony, a couple related things. There were questions in the chat from our audience about coaches and about teaching artists. So one quick question. Someone said, I have coaches in our district. They're paid, from other sources. Can I change their remuneration, cancel their contracts and then count on, Prop 28 money to help with that?
Don't do that yet. Don't do anything yet. This is where, again, having that conversation with the players at your school is very important before you do that, because you don't want your teaching artists that you have now not to get paid. Right. You want to have these conversations for the next year, next semester, whenever it's coming down. But
yeah, super
and be aware, what do they earn hourly?
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference, right? That's huge. We are waiting from the Department of Education on the language around supplant and supplement. Mm-hmm. This should be coming out. We heard this morning it should be coming out soon. And I'm going to say, talk to your site administrator and see what's possible, because I know we have a lot of booster clubs that are paying for these coaches, and we know that's there and that's real. Some booster clubs write the check personally. Some booster clubs give money to the school district and they write the checks. Please know exactly what you do and what will be considered supplant or not. Maybe if it's the point of supplant where, okay, it looks like the boosters still have to pay for this because the check is being cut by the district office, then you're going to use your money for all the consumables and all the things that maybe the boosters have normally always paid for. So just start thinking about how you're going to use that money to follow the law.
And then related to teaching artists, I received a question outside the chat about a new platform called SchoolGig, which you and I talked just briefly with our other panelists about before we came in, because I had received that message about it launching in late September to connect schools and districts with music and arts educators that are teaching artists. Schoolgig.us. What you've been introduced to this? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, basically a site administrator could go on there and say, I need a theater teacher. And then it would help sort the theater teachers out. And then if it's in that area, they would be able to reach out. It's going to be a platform where your need is going to be meeting the teaching artist's resume of sorts. So then there'll be a point of contact for those teaching artists to come in and go, I've got Tuesday afternoons. I really want to do this. How can I help?
Fantastic. We're at the top of the hour. What a fast, valuable, information-filled conversation. And also to all of you who are here in the audience and asking questions, don't worry. If we haven't directly addressed your question, I'm going to give you an email address. You can send me a note personally. I'll make sure we take care of the questions and get them back to you. But before we close for today, first, I want to thank my co-host in the moderation, Jim Frankel. Jim, any other questions or comments you'd like to make, share with Ann and Tony and our audience before we transition to close today?
No, I just thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And I think that for many, whenever something new, and especially as monumental as Prop 28 is introduced, there's more questions than answers. And so I'd like to personally thank Ann and Tony for spending their time with our audience members today, trying to answer some of those questions. And I know you're going to still have more. But certainly, I think a lot of information has been shared and a lot of links. Please go and look at those. And MusicFirst and Focusrite will be here to help as well. So thanks, Lee, for co-hosting this with me. And a huge thanks to Ann and Tony for sharing your wisdom.
As always, Dr. Frankel, wonderful to work with you. And before I ask for closing comments from Tony and for Ann, anything you'd like to share with the audience before we go? If you have a question or something that hasn't been addressed yet today, I don't always do this, but it's pretty simple. You can just write me at lee.whitmore@focusrite.com. I will make sure the questions get through to Anne, to Tony, and to other experts, and we will answer them. So lee.whitmore@focusrite.com, and it may take a couple of days. It's a busy time of year for all of us, but we will address them. I'm so grateful for all of you in the audience. Let's go to Tony and then to Anne. Tony, thank you very much for taking the time. I'm so grateful. What would you like to share with our audience before we close today?
First of all, I'd like to thank the esteemed panel as well. Thank you, Anne, for recommending me to be here. And thank you to Lee and to Jim. Thank you for what you do, on a regular basis, for helping to keep music and music technology, all those things in the forefront, which is important. Also, too, I do have a little Chinese quote I want to leave with you, proverb. It says, knowledge is the treasure and practice is the key to it. Knowledge is the treasure and practice is the key to it. And all of us who are artists, we know that that is what it takes, is the practice, and it's a constant practice. So I want to say good luck to everybody who want to come into this profession, in this business, and to wish you all luck, and then know that between all of us here, we're here to help you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Madam President.
Oh my goodness, you guys. Well, first of all, thank you for having this opportunities to help support teachers. And Jim and Lee, just a pleasure always. And Tony, I just miss hanging out with you. So believe it or not, I'm gonna tell you the year. It was 2008 when you all met, because I was in that exact room at NAMM with Mary Lurson and Quincy Jones. So I know the year because it was a special year for me in that regard. So 2008, there you go. I'm going to give 2 words, and it's be patient and plan. That's it. Be patient and plan.
Fantastic. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you to everyone in our audience. We're all here as resources. We're all here for the same mission. Your students' music and arts education, it makes lives better in every possible way. And it's great to be with all of you. We're simpatico in that. Thank you all very much. And to our audience, thanks, and we'll see you again soon.
Great.
Have a great afternoon and evening.